Welcome to Founders vs. CISOs podcast. In this podcast, we will talk to well-positioned CISOs and to founders of startup companies in the cyberspace to try and answer some key questions. We'll pick the brains of leading CISOs in the industry and prominent founders in the industry to try and bridge the gap between market needs and sales decks. We'll discuss anything from market positioning to your whiskey of choice. Join us for a light talk. Let's start our first podcast with Hanan Schwartzbord, the CISO of Marvell. A quick introduction about Hanan. Started with a career in IT, spent about 12 years with PMC Sierra, now Microsemi. You did your first relocation stint in Canada, spent about 3.5 years at Sapiens as the CIO, and then moved to Marvell, who in turn pulled you from Israel to the Silicon Valley. And I think you're one of those IT guys who matured into the CISO role, which means that you hold a unique position and a perspective around the ins and outs of IT, its challenges and dissonance between the IT and the information security, and as the role of the CISO. Anything you wanted to add? Give a quick introduction about yourself.
No, thanks, Ben. I think this is a good summary of the stuff that I did so far. Pretty short, but we have to start somewhere.
Yeah. Well, let me just add to that. I know that you're married +3. I know your favorite drink is whiskey. If you could just remind me the brand that you like most.
My favorite brand is Lefroy. It's a really smoked whiskey from the Isle of Isle. And it's something that I've been doing for a few years now.
Good choice. I like the Lagavulin. It's also smoky. You probably know that, right?
Yeah, that's good as well.
Great. So Hanan, let me just let's start this session here. I'm gonna ask you a few introductory questions. And let me tell you, you might not like all of them, but just feel free to, answer to whatever you'd like, and just feel free to, let's just keep this as an open conversation. Okay, so let's start with the first question. What's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
That's a good question. I think, and you mentioned that when we did the intro. I started my role as a very technical role. I've been doing IT for probably more than 20 years now. And one of the things that you don't learn quick enough, or at least I haven't learned quick enough, is the difference between the IT point of view to the business point of view. And one of the things that you learn as you mature and you get more experience is that the business comes first and not always IT. And I think what we are trying to do now, in my point of view now, as a CISO, is not always only how to secure the business. It's most of all how to make the business more resourceful and provide the business more options to be more successful. At the end of the day, my job at Marvell is to make the Marvell's team more successful. And that requires us to come up with sometimes quirky solutions, and a lot of times to find new innovations and new concepts and new ideas to see how we can still secure the business and allow it to be more successful.
Yeah. And actually, that's a transition I've seen a lot of CISOs go through in my career. And I think I've started seeing it more and more, probably in the last 5 years or so, that CISOs really understood that their role was more of a business role than like an IT focused role or, anything around vulnerability management role. I think in the last 5 years is when I started seeing more and more CISOs really hold like executive positions, and really working with the business and not against it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where we all should be, or not all of us, but a lot of us should go to. especially as a CISO, there's a lot of room for security operations teams and security operations management, and we need the teams to be able to take what we sometimes envision and make that reality. And someone needs to go over the logs, and someone needs to harden the servers. We still need to do that. We still need to make sure that that's the basis of everything that we do. But we also need to have the strategies in place, and the strategies are more business related than operationals related at the end of the day.
So let me jump into the probably one of the most inconvenient questions that I will ask you this during this podcast. What would you say was your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
It's a good question. I think, as CISOs or CIOs or executives, we make a lot of mistakes. We make a lot of wrong assumptions about the business. And I think pretty early on, especially in my days in PMC Sierra, you learn that you have to collaborate with the business. You can't assume that you know what the business actually needs. One of the things that we learned during part of a BCP training that we went through is that we understood that a lot of the assumptions that back then IT had about what are the most critical environments in the company, we weren't completely off, but we weren't exactly on target. And I think what I learned from that, and going back to what I said earlier, is that we don't need to assume. It's really important that we talk to the business, we communicate with the business. And one of the things that we are trying to do now is to keep a very open line of communication with the business and work with them on the requirements and what they actually see as critical. A simple BIA would have solved that, but a lot of companies don't have the time and the resources to go through something like that. And I think as a CISO or as an executive in IT, it's really important, even if it's not always the most comfortable thing to do, because they have different goals, maybe. We need to make sure that IT and cybersecurity even more aligns to those requirements. It's important to know that the business is going to go to the cloud or that we're going to remain on-prem, for example.
Yeah. So basically aligning IT and information security, cybersecurity with the business goals and needs. This is what your biggest takeaway out of one of your biggest failures, right?
I think so. I think making sure that we're working on the same things is always important, because we're providing the infrastructure, would it be IT, in a lot of cases security as well. It's really important that we find the new and innovative ways to actually allow that. Because if not, the business will miss its target, and then, what's the point?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I am in complete agreement with you about that. So we've spoken about the biggest failure. Let's move on and ask you about your biggest accomplishment, if there is anything you want to share.
Yeah. I think
you
that's even
can
a harder
share.
question.
Yeah.
That's a harder question. I think I had a lot of success in my career, and I think one of the things that I like more than anything else is the interaction with my teams. I think a lot of the success that I had in my career, in a lot of cases, was to allow really smart people to do what they like to do, and put the right challenges in front of the right people. And I think I'm as strong as my team at the end of the day. And I really feel that having a strong team allows me to be successful and to do what I need to be doing. I've been working and managing people for many years, and it's always a pleasure to see people grow and mature and find the right challenge for them. And I think that's something that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah, and I think that's a very empowering phrase, what you just said. I'm as strong as my team. I think that would be the headline of this podcast. Yeah, and I'm sure your team will be happy. I'm not sure if you would want me to share that with them, but I will. But yeah,
They know that. That's fine.
no, that's great. That's a great culture, I think. So, so what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours?
That's an awesome question. I think what I would suggest to people is to learn a lot and read a lot and experiment a lot. Um, in my view, a CISO is someone that needs to be able to have a discussion with the IT operations teams or the engineering teams or the compliance teams, the legal, HR, and so forth. We need to have enough information to understand the risk. We need to have enough information to understand what is the potential risk, what are the benefits, what are the values in a lot of the processes that we look at. There's a lot of marketing out there in the cybersecurity. The cybersecurity startups and there are a lot of good ones, but they're pushing a lot of new technology that we don't always require, and a lot of technology that, you know, I'm not sure if it will be here with us for the next couple of years. And I think by learning and getting as much experience as you can, you have the ability to decide what's more important for your company and what are the best things to invest in.
Yeah. So I guess one of the key takeaway here is not buy technologies, solutions, and services just because the vendor provided you with a great discount. Is
Yeah,
actually lead in accordance to your strategy, right?
it is, and you do need to have a strong uh, connection with your vendors. But you know, if I go back to the question of what's the thing, so the one thing I would tell to people is work hard. There's no shortcuts. There are no magic pills or anything. It's hard work and it's fun. You know, challenges are awesome. We love challenges.
That's good advice. So let me ask you another quick question here. So, you know, taking into consideration that you grew out of IT, so what do you feel about the role of a CISO that is actually a part of the IT division? What are the pros and cons for that?
One of the things that we thought about when I moved into IT is where would I be able to influence and provide more support to the company. And I think the IT team that we have in Marvell, we work really close together and we're able to achieve a lot of very quick wins to the company, and we were able to provide a lot of support. Obviously, the con around it is that we're all fighting for the same resources, and sometimes a lot of the change that we need to do in Marvell comes from the discussions, and that in some cases would take longer. I think some of my peers in some cases would prefer to sit outside of IT, and there are some benefits to that. Uh, but in Marvell, in the current situation, I think it works and it does make sense. Potentially in another company, in another phase in my life, I would think differently. But for the current team that we have in Marvell, we see a lot of benefits doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it works really well.
Yeah. Okay. That's great feedback. But let me just ask you, you know, another question related to that. Do you ever feel that you're somewhat in a place where there's, you know, I don't know, maybe conflict of interest or lack of segregation of duties or anything like that, that you might, you know, you might assume two roles and you feel conflicted about, you know, what comes first, IT or cyber?
Um, I don't think so. I think it's a reason why you take people that are seasoned pros, and I've been working on this for enough time. I also have a lot of audit and compliance that reviews what we do and reviews the decisions that we take. I think the first thing that has to come forward is what's the best solution for the company, and what should we do to make sure that the company is successful. Um, I think that in my view, if I would just go and block everything, because that's the most secure thing in life, you know, that's probably not the best solution for Marvell. If I open everything, again, that's not the best thing. It's all at the end of the day to understand what's the best recipe and what percentage you do for blocking and what percentage you do for allowing. I think IT and being part of IT allows me, although a lot of the decisions are separated and my team reviews those decisions but doesn't always take them, it allows us to have closer view to what's changing in the company, the new technologies that are coming in, and how we need to protect them. One of the things that we can maybe look at is, would we have the same kind of visibility if we were part of a different group, coming as an auditor instead of a partner? So there are pros and cons to both options.
Okay. And I know you've mentioned that I'm as strong as my team, but what are the other best resources that have helped you along the way, apart from that?
Yeah, I think there are different levels. I think if we talked about communication with business leaders, that's always a great resource to understand what we're going through. I've been working in very technological companies for all my life, and you find that there are really smart people that work in different groups in the same company that you don't always know that. Obviously, we work with trusted partners. We have a list of a few trusted partners, technology partners that we work with. And we get a lot of the information from them. You see where they're taking the technology. If enterprise cybersecurity company decides to invest a lot of millions in new technology, identifying a risk, I think it makes sense in some cases to follow them. In some cases it doesn't, but at least it puts that technology on the radar for us. We also work with a few advising companies and get some support from them. One of the things that, at least in my point of view, we do a lot is we don't always work with local companies. One of the benefits that we see if you work with different regions, you find that there are different risks and challenges that they face to. And because Marvell is a global company, and most of my life I worked in global companies, you end up understanding that you need the perspective. You need to understand what your team in India sees, and you need to understand what the team in China sees, or the team in Europe. And that helps a lot when you start planning your roadmap.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so would it be accurate to say that for you, like a combination of a strong team, strong support network of vendors and advisors, and possibly a global network as well, would that sum it up?
And Google, yes.
And Google, yeah, of course, yeah. You can never. I can't even understand how we did anything before Google. But
I don't think we did anything before, but
no.
this is coming a commercial for them. So
yeah, we're just watching like one channel on the television or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had another quick question for you. Can you name 3 people who have been the most influential to you?
Sure. I think it was a combination of people that helped me on the technical side, gave me my first chance, and allowed me to grow as a professional, but also people that sort of helped me grow as a manager, and to see, what is the value of communication, and what is the value of having a strong team. And I see that a lot in my teams today. When I started as a young leader, as a young manager, few years ago, or many years ago, it's sometimes hard to understand, that you need a strong team. And one of the managers that I had back then basically explained to me the value of a strong team. When your team is successful, you're successful. And I think that's something that you learn. So instead of looking for people that you don't feel threaten you as a manager and won't be able to replace you, I want the guys that can replace me. I want the guys that are stronger, and the guys that are smarter and will tell me what am I doing wrong. I like people that that tell me, that my ideas are need some improvement, and we still need to work on the plan, because I think that makes me stronger and that makes my team stronger. And I think that's confidence that comes with time, and having the really strong, really seasoned manager to come there and support you, that is always an added value. On the technical side, all we need, or sometimes all we need, is a chance. And I think having the manager that pushes you on the technical side to come up with a not always obvious solution, to teaches you how to think outside of the box. I think that's a great value as well. And the last one, that might be an interesting one, was the manager that kept challenging me on a personal level, making sure that I do take the right decisions, have a lot of oversight of everything that I do. But he taught me how to be very confident with my decisions, to listen to others, but to be very confident with what I'm looking forward to and how I strategize my steps. And I think that helped me a lot feel more secure about my processes. And it's interesting because that was a big challenge, but a very rewarding challenge that I often go back to when it's a little bit hard. And I think one of the things that I learned from that, and I really enjoyed that, I really like being audited. I like when there is an audit, because I like someone else coming in and saying, okay, it makes sense. What you're doing actually makes sense. It takes some of the uncertainty out, and as a CIO, as a CISO, there's a lot of uncertainty. We always talk about, we all know we're going to get breached at some point, and unfortunately, there isn't a lot we can do against that. It's all how fast can you discover it, and having someone else coming in and saying, okay, your protection looks good, you're on the right direction. It gives some comfort. It helps a little bit, and I think that's something that was a hard lesson, but a very rewarding one and a very important one at this point of my career.
Yeah. And I think the professional world is divided between those who see audits as a check the box type of thing, and those who look at audits as an opportunity to really, get something reviewed and possibly get some value out of that as well.
Yeah.
And
in my view, it's I completely agree. It's part of the continuous improvement. That's where it has to be. And we've been working a lot on improving our environment, so it just makes sense.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, let's go forward. I have another question for you that I think you might like here. So the question goes like this: what is the one common myth about your profession or field that you want to debunk?
Nice. I think if I have to choose one, I would say more products is better. I think one of the things that some of our partners don't always understand, some of the vendors don't always understand, that in the list of risks, and it's a long list that each one of us has, it's not always smart to just throw more services and more resources and more. It just doesn't help. We need to be very focused on what we're trying to deal with. We cannot throw technology forever. We have to go back. We have to consolidate. We have to make sure that there is a strong relationship between the vendors that we work with, and that they can play nicely together. I know that there are a lot of new risks out there. There is a lot of new technology. It's hard to try and deal with everything at the same time. It's impossible to try and deal with everyone at the same time. I think that even if I would double my team and double my resources, I wouldn't be able to treat each and every one of the risks out there. So we have to do some math, and we have to come back with the strategy and the plan and the logic behind it. And we have to decide what is the technology that we want to try to invest in. And it takes time, and it takes a lot of experience to do that. And we're not always right, unfortunately. But I think what people need to understand, and some of the folks that we work with, is that we just cannot keep trying to throw more technology on issues. We need to focus on what we're actually going to do.
Yeah, yeah, because otherwise I think you just spend so much time on, you know, feeding those products, working on those products, and not necessarily getting the value that you need out of them. And I think that comes back to a topic that we've touched on earlier in the conversation, where, you know, whether you want to lead or be led by whatever, by a vendor, a discount, or anything else for that matter.
Agreed. You know, a lot of cases we forget that, you know, if the device is working and there is a beautiful blue light pinging in the server room, it doesn't mean that we finished the implementation. You know, the fine tuning takes the longest, and it's the most important thing. Making sure that it collaborates with the other tools that you have is more important than having the blue light in the server room. So we tend to leave not enough time to the actual fine tuning and more to the initial deployment. And I think that's something that, you know, a lot of the teams that I was working with and the teams that I led didn't always remember that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me ask you a personal question that that relates to me actually. As you know, I'm the CEO of a group of companies. It's a consulting group. So if you could step into my shoes as the CEO of a consulting group, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't, in your opinion?
I think a lot of people that work in sales, and unfortunately as a CEO, you do a lot of sales. People don't always stop to ask what is actually bothering me right now. What are my top 5, top 10? And I know in a lot of cases we don't like sharing that, because that opens the door to some other sales guy to come in. I think it's important to understand the industry. I think it's important to understand the risk overall. And I think semiconductor manufacturing business is going through a lot of challenge right now, and that challenge is new to us in a lot of cases, and we have to deal with a lot of risks that we didn't have to work with in the past. I think what I would expect, or maybe expect is a big word, but I'm hoping people will stop offering me money for my time. If you have an awesome product, I'll be happy to talk to you. If you have to pay me to listen to you, I probably won't do that. Don't offer me gifts. Don't offer me those things. I've never liked that, and I don't take gifts. If your product is good, we'll be happy to talk to you. If it's good, we'll even buy it. But that's something that, you know, I was always trying to distance myself from.
Yeah. And that actually brings me to a couple of more questions around that. But let me just ask another quick question regarding the topic that we just covered. So you said if your product is good, we will happily talk to you. I'm assuming when you say product, you also mean services?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Same
Okay.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see the difference between the two.
Okay, great. So, and right now I'm coming up to the follow-up question. What's the most annoying sales pitch you've encountered?
Wow, there are so many.
So many of them.
What to choose here? Oh, that's so hard. Like the stories I can share. I think, you know, the worst thing that you can do is put me in a bad spot with my management. And I've seen that a lot. I don't like when people do that. I don't like when people send me gifts. I already said that, because I really hate that. But you know, I've seen situation where people will make my management second guess my decisions, and put me in a spot that I have to defend myself against the vendor. Unfortunately, that's not going to last. You know, I need to trust the vendor. I need to trust my partner. And would it be an auditor, or would it be a vendor? Would it be a reseller? I need to trust them. One of the hardest things, I think, for us to differentiate between the different types of salespeople. And I think it's if there's one thing that I really appreciate if people don't do, don't assume that I have the time. Don't do the cold calls. Don't do the cold emails, the LinkedIn attacks. I don't have the time. Like I don't have the time to spend doing that, and it's really hard, and I really feel bad when someone sends me an email and I don't respond, or someone sends me a LinkedIn invite but I don't respond. But there's so many, and there's one of me, and it's always hard to not respond to someone. And I know, unfortunately, CISOs have this reputation, which instead of defending, I'm saying, yeah, it's true. But the real honest truth is that I can't go over every technology out there and every cool startup, and we sometimes go back to them and sometimes we don't, but it's too much. There's so many stories, Ben. I'm thinking in my hand of a few of those, and it's funny now, but it wasn't then. When you're trying to build a partnership, you have to trust your partner. So when I tell you that I don't have the funds for it this year, or I don't have the resource, and I can't make it this year, or I don't think it's my priority, trust me that it's not always a negotiation step. And being more pushy doesn't always help. Being a good partner helps.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that was a great piece of advice that a lot of the vendors out there might appreciate. But now that we've covered what not to do, can you tell me what it is that you are looking for in a vendor, or if you could possibly share, anything about that?
I think vendors that do their homework and show their value are more important than anything else. I have partners and vendors that I've been working with for decades, and I've been staying in touch with them even if we don't work together, because that provides them a perspective of where I am and what's important to the industry. Vendors that understand manufacturing have more value to me than vendors that just found me on LinkedIn and send me a cold text. I see much more value in that. I think, and obviously in my very limited visibility of what a vendor would do, I see a lot of benefit, in vendors that understand the long run, not be particular about, you need to pay me 3 more cents for something to happen. And I think I would value more a vendor that will just help us and move on, because he understands that there's going to be a follow-up to whatever we were doing first, and there's going to be a next stage and a next stage. And I think there is much more value in a vendor that sees that. And obviously, working with sales for most of my career, you see the difference, and you learn that really quickly. I do like, my team works hard, I work hard, and I like that the people I work with, the partners, work to get the product and to provide us the resources that we need. And I think what I'm asking in a lot of my communications with salespeople is to have an honest discussion. I know it's a lot to ask, but and that's one of the reasons I hate PowerPoint. Death by PowerPoint is a real thing, and I think it's more, to me, it's more productive to have the discussion. I also think that what people need to understand is that we don't always have the time. When I get a strong reference from one of my colleagues, that they've been working with a vendor, they've been getting the information from a vendor, they're getting the results from a vendor, for me, that's really important. One of the things that we will never do, we don't buy new technology unless we talk to some of our colleagues and our peers and understand, that it was a successful implementation. We do cutting bleeding edge at sometimes, but it really depends on the technology and the benefit to the company. I think talking to my team is also an option. Please don't flood my team. They work hard, they don't have time. But if they strongly believe that there's a strong solution, there's a strong product that we need to review and we need to talk to, I think that's something that I will definitely be much more open to listen to. And maybe the last request, if I told you no once and I told you no twice, please believe me that third time is still going to be a no. So give me some space.
Okay, and so you actually partially answered my next question, which was I wanted to ask you, how can vendors actually connect with you in a non-intrusive manner? And you kind of touched on that, but if you wanted to give some more clarity about that.
Sure. I think the industry is where I find a lot of the resources that I need. In a lot of cases where we identify that we have a risk or we have a concern, we have something we want to be focusing on, we would reach out to our network, to my peers and colleagues, and ask them, what do you do? What policy did you deploy? What product did you deploy? What information I should be looking into? How did the deployment went? And that saves me a lot of time. And there are dozens and dozens of examples of that being successful. At the same time, going and talking to my team in some cases where my team is interested in the technology because they know what I would be looking into. That could be helpful as well. But again, my team has even less time than I do, so getting to them is as hard as talking to me. And I think in a lot of cases, what I would be looking for is finding the market leaders and to hear about that. So we follow a lot of the market, the press releases and the changes in the market. So a lot of times we'll reach out to vendors ourselves. Sometimes it's more successful, sometimes it's not. But if you're trying to push something, you have to be careful, because too much is as bad as not contacting us enough. If a vendor leaves us with a bad taste in our mouth, if I can say that, it's going to be hard to forget that.
Yeah. So
and one more thing, sorry, I forgot about it earlier. Moving between companies, that's always fun, but you have to remember that, a lot of my priorities in company A would be different in company B. So assuming that we're going to use the same technology, it's not true. I use what's right for the company, not the guys that I used to work with before. And I found that some vendors or partners find that hard to believe and hard to deal with. So there you go. I got everything off my chest now. I'm free.
Sounds good. So I'm guessing like the traditional 12 touch points with a potential prospect will not work with you. Sending emails and calls and on top of calls. Yeah.
Please don't.
Yeah. You don't have to worry about me. I won't. Okay, so so I had another question to ask you about how and where can listeners, if they want to, how can they connect with you online? I mean, and I'm not sure if if this is something that you're because you just spent a few minutes talking about it. But yeah, it's up to you if you want to take that.
I have to admit, 99% of the social media I'm in, you will not find me. And if you will, it's not really me. It's one of the fake accounts that, unfortunately, they're out there. I'm not really a social media person, so that's for that. I think in my corporate life, again, we talked about it. It's harder. I think what helps more is finding the right connection. The only place that I sort of keep some active social life is LinkedIn. I don't know if I can call LinkedIn a social platform, but that's pretty much it, because I like keeping track where people are, and it's easy to find connections there.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it.
Okay. When we were speaking about how can vendors connect with you in a non-intrusive manner, so you kept saying that you go back to your network and you consult with your colleagues and so on and so forth. But let me ask you another question about that. Doesn't it perpetuate the status quo, whereas you just work with the same bunch of vendors and companies throughout your career? I mean, how can new companies, new vendors, even, I mean, it could be a startup company and it could be an established vendor. How can they actually reach out to you?
So I'll that's a very very good question. I'll divide my answer into two here, and I think there's something that I should probably just explain. Um, I don't think I've worked all my life with the same vendors. I think I've worked with large vendors and startup companies, and it's a different process with both of them. Larger companies would often know how to reach us because they either work with someone in my team, or in a lot of cases they know someone from my network, and they will see who can help them get there. Startups are different, and I think in both cases it's all about people, about the chemistry, about the trust and the partnership that happens between the vendor and us. And I think in a lot of cases, that trust takes time, and it's hard and impossible, I would say, even to make it happen artificially. And I think it's a matter of the dedication and continuing to work with us. I can share a few companies that I worked with in the past, from the startup mode to, depending on the company, a more established company. Storewise, for example, was one that I think I was customer number 1 or 2. Marvell has been customer number 2 for Armis, and I'm working now with a few startups. One of them is Findings, that actually does supply chain security, which I think is a huge risk that we're looking into. I think startups are really interesting. It just again goes back to, we cannot deal with everyone. And building the relationship and the trust takes time and some patience from both sides.
Okay, that's a great feedback. I'm sure a lot of potential vendors would love to hear that. Got it. So we're almost wrapping this up, and I know you have another meeting, so I won't. I'm trying to be respectful of your time. Let me just get those two out of the way. What's the most important thing to you in your career?
I think the most important thing for me as a person is to be challenged and to do interesting things that will influence people and influence companies, and allow me to touch technology, allow me to touch and work with smart people. I think, if I had to choose between, being really challenged to doing a 9 to 5, I would probably go to the being really challenged. I like working hard. I like getting the exciting challenges and challenge my team. I think it's more rewarding for me and helps me get out of bed in the morning. I don't do well being bored, and my team knows that very well. When I'm bored, we have new projects and new stuff coming their way. And I think, I want to continue being challenged, and I want to continue working in fast growing companies that provide new and exciting challenges.
Great stuff. So, I would like to wrap this up with 2 personal questions. And again, feel free to take whatever that feels right to you. The first one is, if you had unlimited funds, what would you do with your life?
Unlimited funds, you say? I don't know. I don't think I can think about unlimited funds. That's a lot. I think what I want to do more is have more time to do two things. One, learn. I would love to go back to school. I would love to do some more of that. Really love learning, and there are things I want to learn. And the second one is spend more time with my family. Working in this role means a lot of hard working hours and long hours, and working at every hours of the day. I think I miss too many family occasions and birthdays and stuff like that. So, I know I can't make it up, but I do want to spend more time with the family.
Yeah.
So work-life balance is a big thing if I have unlimited funds.
Yeah. I'm totally in agreement with you about that. So, and one last question, just to get to know you a bit better. Have you read or listened to anything recently that really inspired you? Did you have like a aha moment?
um, I don't know if there's something in particular. I read a lot of things at the same time. So some cases it takes me years to read a book. I think one of the books that I just finished reading is an Israeli book by Professor Yossi Assur. Um, the name of the book is When You Ran Out of Hot Water. I don't know if it's translated to English or not. I'm sorry, but it's a book that talks about decision making and how to make the right decisions. It helps when you look on some of the things that you have to do on your day to day. And I think one of the things that you learn in life, and I don't know if that helps or not, but is to understand that in some cases, not making a decision is worse than making the wrong decision. And in a lot of cases, we need to make a decision and potentially go back and fix it. We need to have the right information. We need to have the right teams. We need to have the right resources, but we also need to make the decision. So really awesome book.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Any parting words you'd like to leave our audience with?
I don't know. I think we went through a lot of stuff. So thank you very much for inviting me for the first podcast, and I hope to be invited again for the 100th one. And thank you very much for your time.
Same here, Hanan. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for another episode of CISOs Insiders. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more professional content, please check us out on social media.